describe the thing? Any method?
If I hear you correctly, you are asking about the annotation that we use to while writing the REST API. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So I mean, I used to develop REST in using Spring Boot. So the very first annotation that is written in a Spring Boot is a Spring Boot application. Okay, and it means it is a combination of three annotation, which is component scan, enable auto configuration, and @configuration. So what it will do, it will just read your pom.xml, whatever dependency you have defined. It will read those dependency and provide you the dependency, and it will configure those dependency in your project, in your class path. Component scan is like it will read all the beans defined in your in your package in which the main class has been defined, and it will register those beans into your context. And yeah, configuration means if you have defined any like configuration class, then it will read those class as well and define the configuration. Then you need to write the controller, your repository. I mean, for data access, you need to define a repository class, and for the service method to define your business logic, you need to define a service class. And in your controller, you will use this annotation like get mapping, put mapping, post mapping, and delete mapping, the CRUD methods, I mean, related to the entity. And then if I talk about the annotation, we use like @autovide annotation, which is very famous annotation when we talk about the dependency injection. And @component. @component means if you are defining a class and annotating this class as a @component, then Spring will read this class and register this class as a bean in your context. And if you are defining @autovide, it means for the object class which you are defining @autovide, it will provide that dependency from the context to your class. @repository, it is a stereotype annotation which is used to annotating with the data access layer. So whenever you are playing with the data and defining some methods which interact to the database, you will define that class or interface as the @repository. @service, as I said, it will whenever we are defining the service class method, I mean our business logic, which will get the data from the repository layer, we will define that class as the service. And @controller is I mean, in the controller class, we will define all the methods which will interact with the client, like put mapping, post mapping, delete, and get mapping, in which we define actually the URL which will be used, I mean REST endpoint basically. Yeah, that's it. I think you can ask like if I forget to mention anything, you can ask me. Am I audible, Vijay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm just looking. So how we can provide security for a RESTful?
Security, yeah. For security, we are using Spring Security Basic Authentication. But in inter-service security, we are using GWT tokens, basically.
Okay.
Sorry. So
what is the use of hashcode and equals method in core Java?
Hashcode and equals. So hashcode and equal contract is basically used for in a hashing data structure. So whenever you, I will take example of hash map. So if two objects are considered to be equal, then it is necessary that their hash code must be equal. Okay. If you are not using, I mean, if you are not following this rule, HCL and equal contract, then it is possibility then your object will run into the hash code collisions, and which will impact your performance. So basically, this is the hash code and equal contracts. If we take an example of hash map, so whenever you are saving any object into the hash map using put method, so first it will do using your key, it hash code, and based on that hash code, it will generate a index in the index where your object will be saved in the hash map. So hash code initially has like uh, 16 bucket, 1 to 16 by default. And suppose whenever you are calculating hash code, the bucket number came as second or third, so your object will be saved to that bucket. And suppose by any mean, if you are not overriding the hash code method properly, the hash code will be same for many objects, and then it will use linked list structure to save those objects. Now while saving, it will check if the key of the value, I mean the key of the object is same or different. If it is same, if it is the key of the value is same, then it will check the hash code. Okay, and you have not overridden properly, then hash code will be same. So this situation will reign as hash code collisions. So then it will be like it will same in the same linked list. It will append node into the same linked list. So I mean this is the hash code and equal contracts basically.
Yeah, got it. So what are the Java 8 features that you have used in your project? Java 8 features.
Okay, so Java 8, Java developer introduced many features in Java 8, but if you ask me like what features I have used, so I have used Stream API, for each loop, Lambda expressions I have used in my project, and most importantly, we are using comparator. In comparator, they have introduced many static methods which are very useful when you are comparing the objects, and I have used those. And the methods which when you are working with a bulk data set, so whenever you are fetching data from the database, so somewhere between we used to filter those data, so we can use intermediate methods, filter stream methods, and collectors methods. So yeah, lambda, you used to write lambda to implement the functional interface, so we need not to define. So we are defining a custom comparator, so we actually do not need to define it as in a separate class. We just write a lambda expression for that. Also, they have introduced datetime API, but I do not have, I don't get chance to work on that. But yeah, they have introduced many features in Java 8.
See, I have a list of student objects. Okay, and where student object having a marks is one of the attribute.
Okay.
So I want to sort it out student list as per the marks in ascending order.
In ascending order.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean this can be done by using comparator. So what I will do, you have a student list and you want to in which they have marks as a field, and you want to sort that object using using that marks in ascending order. So what I will do, I will just use student list dot stream. Okay, then I will use collect. Just let me think. I will use sorted. So they have like sorted method. In sorted, in the bracket, I will provide the comparator, and to provide the comparator, I will use comparator dot comparing, and then comparing in bracket, I will provide the criteria on which I want to sort my object. So I will use method reference. So student.
Can you write that code in the chat box if you don't mind?
Yes, yes, yes. Definitely, I can write in a chat, or I share my notebook, whatever you like. Okay, I will write the code in the chat. So it's student list in the chat. Okay, I will share my screen because the problem with the chat box is whenever I press the enter, it will just uh, send the whatever. So I will just share my screen. Just give me a moment. Just let me know if my screen is visible. So I'm guessing the student list is a list. Then I will use stream method. and while string method I will use sorted. In sorted I need to provide the comparator. For that I will use comparator dot comparing, and in this I will provide the method reference. So if I have a student class which have marks field, so get mark, I mean get marks, and after that it will sort the all the student list in the ascending order. Then I will use collect method, collectors dot to list. So yeah, I mean, and this way we can sort the student list in the ascending order. If we want to sort in descending order, we can just use the reversed order also. Like here we can define the reverse. I think after the sorted we can define the reverse order. So it also has a method of to reverse the order. Yeah. And if you want, like I also have Eclipse. If you want me to write the proper code, maybe I have some syntax error in that, but I can write it with a proper syntax in Eclipse, because IDE helps a lot while writing a code.
Just to copy that in chat box, not just.
You are not able to see my screen? I've copied in the chat box. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got
Okay.
I get it.
Okay. I mean, there are actually many methods by using which we can sort this. We also have a sort method in which we just have to provide the comparator. So using comparator we can define. If we are using like Java 7 features, then we actually you have to define a comparator first, in which we will use compare to method, and we will define, it will return an integer value based on the marks comparison. Then we will use that imperator. But using Java 8, it's pretty easy.
Okay.
Yep. Shall I stop sharing my screen, or because I think I'm not visible to you whenever I'm sharing my screen, my video got off.
Yeah, you can opt.
Okay.
So whether you have used any design patterns?
In my project, yes, I have came across. I mean, I've been working with singleton design pattern, factory design pattern, builder design pattern. Also, we are using facade design pattern, which is a structural design pattern.
So what is the single design pattern?
Singleton design pattern. So
Yeah.
basically, whenever you want to provide a single instant, only one instant across the life cycle, then we use singleton design pattern. Like Spring use actually singleton by default. So one instance per request.
Okay. So can I have the coding notation? How we can declare that?
Singleton design pattern.
Yeah.
So okay. To implement the singleton design pattern, what you have to do, first you have to create a singleton instance, private static. The type of, the variable of class. The type of the variable would be the class type, and it will be private and static. We will not initialize that variable then. I mean, inside the class, I'm writing this, and then we will not. The constructor will be private, okay, and in the we will define a static method which will be public, which will be named as get instance or get something like that, in which we will be create that instant. We will be initialize the private instance that you have defined a variable as a field parameter. We will define only when the instance is not created or it is null yet, and we will use synchronize a block method. Double checking we will also use to make sure that uh, instance is created once, not multiple times. So I mean, we will define a private constructor. This way we can achieve the singleton. We can also we can also use enums, but but they are slow. I mean, so
okay. So what is the factory pattern?
Factory design pattern. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have multiple classes or multiple interfaces, I would say, and you can define a one factory class of those interface methods, and based on the input it will define it will decide, okay, what implementation uh, 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 we have to use. So factory is basically define the method, static methods, in which based on the input it will decide what implementation it has to use. So basically for that we use factory pattern.
Okay. So what is Spring generally used? What are different patterns that Spring used generally?
Spring. So as far as Spring is concerned, Spring basically singleton design pattern. As also Spring by default it provides singleton only, but we can also initialize that. If we want to use prototype, we can also use that. And what else? Spring use facade, singleton design pattern, and Spring also use somewhere between the factory design pattern, and also include I mean directly or indirectly it used, because it at the runtime based on the implementation it will decide type of the class, it will decide which implementation it has to insert. Right now I can recall these two only.
So do you know what are the solid principles?
Yes. I mean, solid principle are basically I would say the principle which we use to implement the design patterns. Design patterns are the implementation of these solid principles only. So I would name like solid. Solid is the acronym for S, stands for a single responsibility principle. So every class or every method should have a single responsibility while designing it. It should not have multiple responsibility. I would take example. Okay, if you are designing a banking application, so one class should not have methods like deposit or withdraw. It should have these two are different responsibility, different work. You should have a different classes or methods separately. So it should have only single responsibility. Then it has open and close closed loop principle. So every class or every method should be open for the extension but closed for the modification. It means you should design your code in a way that it's when you are extending some feature, it should allow this, but when you are modifying this, it should not allow this, because modification will leads to problems with the existing code, existing functionality if you are modifying this. Sorry. Then L stand for Liskov substitution principle. Liskov substitution refers when you are using inheritance. So your child class should be completely substitutable for your parent class. Okay, it should not. You should not design your code in a way that you are not able to substitute your child class with your parent class. Then you are not uh, implementing the inheritance in a proper way. Then we have L, and then we have I. I means interface segregation. So we should write your code in a way that you should segregate your functionality in interfaces. So when you are defining into the class, you have a different functionality. Then you divide those functionality into the interfaces. So I would take example of uh, suppose you have an example of notification service. So in the notification service, we have this WhatsApp notification and I would say email notification. Okay, so you define your code into a notification service, and in which you define some methods like payment by QR code, or payment by some, sorry, forget about this, I'm taking a wrong example. So like we define social media service. On social media we have this Facebook, WhatsApp, and some other social media services, but there are some functionality which are not provided by WhatsApp but provided by Facebook, like post. You can, you can post anything to the Facebook, but not you can post to the WhatsApp. You can just chat with your friends and you can send photos to your friends. So when you are defining a post functionality, you should segregate this functionality in a separate interface. So whenever you are defining WhatsApp class, it should have a flexibility that if it wants to implement the post functionality in future, it will just implement the that interface in which you have defined the post functionality. Okay, so it should have that flexibility. That's what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'm not sure that I'm able to deliver what I'm saying, not, but yeah, this is the concept of interface segregation. We should try to segregate our code as many as interface if it is possible, because we can implement many interface, but we cannot extend many classes in the Java. Then last, D is for dependency inversion. So dependency inversion, like we should write your code in similar way that some other class, like in a Spring we use dependency injection. So somewhere the concept is same, dependency injection. So we developers should not have a responsibility to create dependency. Okay, client has a responsibility to create a implement a dependency. It should decide at the runtime what dependency it has to inject, and with Spring we are using this design principle. Yeah, Vijay.
Yeah, okay. So why you are already there for, around at least just 5 years for you, right, in DSK maybe. So why you are looking for change nowadays? It's pretty...
If I hear you correctly, you are asking that why are you looking for a change?
Yeah.
Okay. To be very frank, Vidya, the first reason is financial stability. I have a financial commitment towards my family. So since it has been 5 years working for the same company, it's a very long time, and now I have to look for the financial stability also. But it is not the only reason. The second reason is technology. Time is changing and the market situation is also changing. If you are not involved with the latest technology, latest framework, latest technology that is coming in the market, then if not now, in future there will be some situation, and then you will regret that, okay, in that time I should have worked on the latest technology, not on the legacy. Currently, I am associated with some of the projects which are totally on legacy and have dependency, and I am not getting myself to, I'm restricting myself to work on the latest technology. Very few time I get a chance to work on latest technology, but I am leveraging that time also. I got to know very much about AWS infrastructure, microservices architecture, and this is something which every Java developer should know, like how to. If not now, in future there will be requirements like this, and then we may have problem if we are not updated. So this is also the second reason for which I am looking for a change. And my project, the current project, is not that much flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. Uh, so have you written any test classes in your project?
Yes, yes, yes. So we are using JUnit while designing the test classes. JUnit, Mockito, PowerMock we are using. I mean, to test our controller classes, we are using PowerMock.
So for Mockito, how we have done? I mean, can I have any syntax that what is the for Mockito? How you have set the any object like that?
For Mockito, yes. So for mock the object, we use actually at the rate mock on annotation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
sorry, can you hear?
Any conditions you use when there is some conditions are there,
Yes,
right?
yes, 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 yes. So like at the rate mock in you will define a DAO class. Suppose so. See, the testing is something you are testing your logic, not the actual connection between the database. So you need not to connect the database actually. You will mock that object. You will mock the method calls. So uh, we actually mock the method calls where we are connecting to the database. We actually mock the database object using at the rate mock annotation. Then we will use when dot method called see DAO dot create entity or something like that, something called, then dot then return, and in return we will define whatever object we want to return. So yeah, in this way we can I mean we define we mock the method calls.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, what are the different assertions you have used?
Assassin, yeah, for sorry sorry assassins, actually like if I'm if I'm correct, you are asking about assertions.
Yeah.
Ah, so uh, assert equals we have used. So in equals we will define when your results and whatever you are expecting, if it is same, then assert equals we have used.
Okay. So for example, I want to do assertion for a exception. So there is some situation where it has to explicitly throw some error exception for me. I
Mhm.
want to test that and I want to have it in assertion. Do I have the syntax for that?
For testing exception you are asking, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we do have for that we have assert dot assert throw. Using assert throw, in assert throw we will define the exception which we are expecting that our code will throw,
Okay.
and then we can define also like it has two parameters in which we can define like lambda expression, uh, or I mean the code which we are thinking that it will throw a exception, and the first parameter we will define the exception which we are expecting. So then it will
Oh, so there will be some assertion tag is there actually. Do you have that idea?
assassin tag.
Yeah, there is some syntax is there for checking the exception as a assertion actually.
I'm talking about, I mean, JUnit 5, we can define the exception in the method only. Like I said, assertion dot assert throw. But if you are expecting, like in JUnit 4, I think they define the exception in the top of the method only, which we are expecting. I'm not able to recall that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how good you are in SQL queries?
Yes, I've been writing in a SQL query. So like in the first project, it was Shoppers Drug Mart. So where I used to write a SQL queries to fetch data from production. So whenever there is any issue or some issue is there, so to analyze that issue, we actually write based on the behavior, we used to write SQL queries, and we will deploy those SQL query in the form of shell script on the production server. It will like they will run in nightly, and they will fetch the data impacted from that behavior. So I'm familiar with the SQL writing, no issue in that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I have 100 students are there. I want to get the marks of second highest person. So can I have?
Okay. I should write a query in a chat box.
Yeah, which one is comfortable for you? That is okay.
Okay. Just let me open the. Oh, sorry. I select marks. I will use Alexa query to find the
Okay.
select marks from select marks from student max where marks is greater than marks is greater than marks is select maximum marks from student where marks is less than select marks from student. I think yeah, this will work. And also we can also use rank function. We can
Okay.
use that as well.
Okay. Do you have any more questions? That's all from my side. I will try to update the updates to the HR. So do you have any
Yeah,
more
yes,
questions?
yes. Just few questions I would like to ask. First, as I said, like I want to work on latest technology. So, what kind of technology uh, uh, you are working, and what kind of work I am being interviewed? Uh, if I get selected, what kind of work I will get? The second question, like in my current organization, I have a for the learning platform, I have a Udemy access, free Udemy access, or in LinkedIn Learning access. So do we have such concept in HCL? So like I can, if I'm not currently working on a technology that is uh, that has a potential in a future, so I can learn that technology from at least a basic idea of that technology from that learning platform. So do we have such concepts?
Yeah, always still encourage people to look for the new trainings or the new technologies. Nobody want to stop you. So there won't be, there is some certain programs are there from the HCL HR people also. So
Okay.
explore anything that is very good concern. And coming to the which part you are going to work, that currently we are not sure. So it's a general recruiting we are trying now.
Okay. It's for pool.
Yeah. So cool, we are pushing. So once that maybe some of the required project may be going to pick you. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all. That.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
that.
your time. Bye bye.